welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet, and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. We're recording a little bit later than usual. There was a hockey game of note tonight, wasn't there?
There was, yeah. I'm feeling very patriotic. Canada beat the United States in overtime in the final of the Four Nations Face-Off, I think this tournament was called. This was, I'm going to be honest, the only game of the tournament that I watched. It felt like there was more than just a hockey game at stake. It felt like a game with a lot of political backdrop. So I was very happy to see Canada come out on top.
Sometimes all of the other stuff can bleed into sports, and we see it. Over the years, we see it at various points in time, but for Canada, it's sort of usually hockey related, and we haven't had one of these moments for quite a long time. So it's kind of interesting for sure. So hockey game's over, so it's time to record, and we got a couple things to talk about this week. But if you are new to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So rather than hockey, we talk about soccer, and we always talk about it through a Calgary-specific lens. So we talk about soccer at the amateur, collegiate, and professional level in Calgary, discussing the teams and the players from the city's soccer community, all the way from the grassroots and youth leagues up to the post-secondary and professional teams.
This week's going to be a relatively short episode. We want to do a couple updates about the Calgary Wild and Cavalry FC. The Wild are in their preseason training, and I think Cavalry are relatively quiet right now. I think they're having a bit of a break, but yeah, we'll go through a couple things regarding both those teams. And anything else to add in, Scott?
No, this is going to be a really short and sweet episode. No interview guest this week. But we just wanted to do a quick update on Calgary's two professional teams.
This is Jacqueline Savixi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Focusing a little bit on the Wild because had a media availability today, and Jason, while neither of us was able to be there, they did make a couple of announcements that we want to touch on.
Yeah, so a new signing. I'm hoping I can get this right. Is it Meggie Dougherty Howard? Is that right?
I think so. Or Meggie, like Meggie is spelled Meggie, and then Dougherty Howard. So she's from the United States, Florida raised. She's a central midfielder. Lots of NWSL experience, most recently with Angel City. But she's logged more than 10,000 minutes over the last 8 years in that league. Some of the other teams she's played for include San Diego, Orlando, and Washington.
Yeah, and before that, she played for the University of Florida Gators. She had a pretty distinguished NCAA career. I think she was all Southeastern Conference MVP, and she was on the All-Conference All-Star team a couple times, and sounds like a bit of a different kind of player than the Wild have signed previously. They've definitely gone out and gotten some experience, but first time they've sort of they've picked up someone with a lot of NWSL experience like this.
Yeah, interesting signing, and it's one where I'm more familiar with the caliber of the league than some of the other signings that have been made. So I'm pretty excited to see the impact she has on the team if she'll be a starter. I can't argue with her resume. Obviously, some really strong pro teams from the U.S. there. And yeah, you mentioned her university career before turning pro was really decorated. Scored quite a bit and got a lot of assists at the post-secondary level, 14 goals and 25 assists, nearly 100 appearances for the Gators. Didn't churn out those kinds of numbers at the pro level, but still a very regular player in the NWSL. Particularly the start of her career with the Washington Spirit, with whom she logged 75 of her 158 NWSL games. But note San Diego Wave in 2023. That's a team, Jason, that you and I have paid some attention to. And then Orlando Pride for a couple of seasons before that. And then last year, 18 games with Angel City FC. You also have to factor in, I think a lot of players are excited to be a part of this new league launching. There's a press release from Calgary Wild today, and Dougherty Howard said, being part of a new team and league from the very beginning is so exciting. Definitely want to be part of this historic moment for soccer in Canada. The enthusiasm from everyone in Calgary's organization drew me in right away. I believe in the vision of the club and will do everything I can to help the team succeed. Calgary is a beautiful city with great sports fans. So I can't wait to get started. So I think that talked a little bit about her motivation. I think a lot of players, they just are really excited to be a part of something like this. So that could be a factor as well.
Speaking of this first season, we had a schedule release today. We got a chance to look at when all the matches are going to be.
Yeah, so Calgary Wild's inaugural game is going to be on April 16th. That's going to be on the road against Vancouver. Fans will have to wait a couple of weeks after that before they get to watch the Wild in action at McMahon Stadium. However, that game is going to be on May 11th at 5 p.m., and that's going to be against Ottawa Rapid.
25-game season, as was discussed. So I guess that means that they're going to play every other team 5 times, although it is a little bit strange to have an odd number of games because that means some teams are going to get 13 home games and some teams are going to get 12 home games.
I was wondering how many games they'd play, and I was thinking 30 would be quite a lot. Yeah, you're right about the 25-game season being kind of odd in the sense that you're right. You're not going to play an even number of home and away games. But overall, I'm glad that it's that many and that it's not just 20.
And by the way, if anyone's wondering, the Wild are playing 13 home games and 12 road games. So they've got the benefit of the extra home game on their schedule.
So we know when the season is going to begin, and we also know that the first week of playoffs are set for early November, and the championship match is slated for November 15th.
And there also was some announcements about TV coverage, and it looks like it's going to be a mix of TSN and CBC, combination of their regular channels and then also their supplementary channels like CBC Gem and TSN Plus.
All right, Jason. So we learned that Meggie Dougherty Howard is joining the roster today. We also learned today who is going to be Lydia Bedford's assistant coach, and she hails from London, England, but she has the most Irish name I've ever heard.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the assistant coach is Sinead McSherry. She's from London, as I mentioned, and she has spent a lot of time recently with the St. Lawrence University Saints. She's been their head coach for the last 7 years.
Previous to that, she was the head coach of another team, I think in a lower division, like Division 3 or something like that. So she's been in the United States for a pretty extended period of time, even though she is originally from England.
Yeah, I've got her profile for the St. Lawrence Saints up here. Joined the program in January 2018, has a 35-20-9 record, advanced to the Liberty League semifinals in 2018-19. She's coached 2 USC Scholar All-Americans, back-to-back All-Region honorees in Julia Mulhern and Hannah Arment, and she's coached 11 All-Conference players. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but she has a pretty lengthy profile on the St. Lawrence Saints page. So if you're curious about her, you can find a little bit more about her there.
And just before we wrap up our Wild NSL area, another Calgarian is making their way to AFC Toronto, Scott.
Yeah, following in the footsteps of Kaylee Hunter, former podcast guest Mya Jones is going to play with AFC Toronto on loan from San Diego Wave this year.
Season-long loan, and this does sort of track with what we had been seeing online. There was reference that Mya was in Calgary, even though the San Diego's camp had started, and there were some questions about what was going on there and why wasn't she with the team. Well, I guess we know now.
Yeah, I mean, you and I speculated if she would stay with San Diego after the head coach that recruited her had left. But overall, I mean, what do you think about her time with San Diego, Jason? It took her a while to get going, but it seems like once she did, she really found her footing. She had 12 starts, 19 appearances overall. She scored 2 goals, and it seemed like she, became maybe not a fan favorite, but pretty popular with the fans in all the clips that I saw.
I think she had a really good first year as a professional. Like, she played a lot of, more than a lot of other rookies play. And she seemed to do well. But as we've mentioned in previous podcast episodes, she does have a couple strikes against her in that, she counts against the foreign player quota, and the management group that brought her in aren't around anymore. So unless you're one of the very top players, I think that your position is tenuous on the team. And so one thing San Diego's doing is they're not just giving up on her and releasing her. They're going to retain her rights and send her to Toronto and let her play. And then I guess at that point they'll see where it all goes. So
and I'm predicting a really strong season from Mya Jones. I think we've seen her play. We've seen her score different kinds of goals. Billy Wilson, who's AFC Toronto sporting director, had really positive things to say about her in the press release, calling her a player who's comfortable operating in multiple positions, has the ability to both create and score. Yeah, I'm excited to see how she does, even though I would have preferred to see her sign with the Wild, of course, or come on loan from San Diego with the Wild.
Definitely. Well, that AFC Toronto game has, as far as opposing teams coming into town, I think that one's at the top of the list from an interest from a Calgary soccer point of view.
Definitely.
Hi, this is Ali Musi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So we'll move on to Cavalry FC. Not a lot of news this week, but I guess the one thing that did come up is the Canadian Championship matchup against Edmonton Scottish. We now have a date and a time for that.
We do. We found out that the Canadian Championship match is going to be held on May 6th at 7 p.m. and that's going to be at Spruce Meadows. So that'll be a bit historic. That'll be, I think, the first time a non-professional team has played against Cavalry at Spruce Meadows in a competitive setting.
It'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out, of course.
I am excited to see this game. I think, as we've talked about in the past, there's a decent number of former FC Edmonton players on the Scottish. So in a way, this will kind of bring back memories of Cavalry's games against the Eddies. It was only, 2023 that FC Edmonton folded, but it feels like it's been a long time since Cavalry had that.
Wasn't it 2022 was their last season?
The end of 2022, but I think it was like early 2023 when they announced it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense because they didn't play in 2023.
They didn't play in 2023. That was I remember because Tobias Warshevsky, right? He was clubless here, but it'll be cool, and I imagine that maybe a decent number of Edmontonians will come down for it, even if it is on a Tuesday night. We'll see. Yeah, I'm curious to see how the Scottish do against Cavalry.
Yeah, and their sporting director, or I guess their head of football operations, is Paul Hamilton, who is a former FC Edmonton player and a Calgary native. He's original.
Yeah, I think he's an alumnus of Foothill Soccer Club. Long hair, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week on an abbreviated episode. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. On our website, we also have links where you can buy Scott's book about Calgary soccer history. You can leave us a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can interact with us on social media, Instagram, Blue Sky, even X, we're still on there, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.